What does it feel like to have depression? It's like going out is exhausting. Talking to people is exhausting. Eating is exhausting. I'm so tired, but just can't sleep. Staying awake all the time. These are the words written by a psychiatrist after suffering from depression. In his words, I sought the reasons for depression but found no specific explanation. He mentioned stress, stemming from his rigorous 8-year academic program, heavy coursework, clinical rotations, and the pressures of a top medical school. This might have been the last straw that broke him. What is the hazards of depression? Many people think of depression as a short-term mood dip that can be resolved by a few days of rest at home. However, real depression is much more complex than that. Some may experience depression just once in their lives, feeling worthless, hopeless about the future, and improving with medical treatment or counseling. Others may suffer recurrent episodes, lasting a long time. Such mental disorders affect attention, memory, thinking, and decision-making abilities, reducing learning and work efficiency, and even daily self-care capabilities. This state can severely damage social and interpersonal relationships. If it affects sleep and appetite, it can lead to a decrease in immunity, chronic diseases development and progression. Untreated, prolonged depression not only becomes a personal and social burden, but can drive some to leave this world. What are the factors influencing depression? Some believe depression stems from not trying hard enough or leading a poor life. No money, car, house, or job, not even a partner, which they don't consider a life worth living. They think if they were financially free with a perfect family, they wouldn't be depressed. This view equates material wealth with mental state and attributes wealth solely to personal effort, ignoring the role of fate. Many successful individuals, from a materialistic perspective, suffer from depression, and some, both domestically and internationally, have died by suicide due to long-term depression. And strive to live, and the will to live is inherent in all animals. Why would someone seen as highly successful be depressed or choose suicide? Doesn't it defy logic? Are they overwhelmed by work stress, unhappy family life, or other hidden struggles? The WHO website explains that depression results from a complex interaction of social, psychological, and biological factors. Can you comprehend the meaning of this statement? Please share your thoughts in the comments. They suggest that those who have experienced adverse life events, like unemployment, loss of loved ones, or severe trauma, are more likely to develop depression. Conversely, depression can lead to more stress and dysfunction, worsening affected individuals' lives and exacerbating their symptoms. They continue, explaining that depression is closely related to and affected by physical health. There are many factors influencing depression, such as prolonged inactivity or chronic alcohol consumption, which are also risk factors for cardiovascular diseases, cancer, diabetes, and respiratory illnesses. People with these chronic diseases might develop depression under uncontrolled conditions. From the above, we see that successful individuals, those who have experienced adverse events, and those in poor health can all develop depression. What commonality do they share? I think it can be summarized in one word: stress. What is stress? In a narrow sense, we often consider stress to originate psychologically, as in the adverse impact of life events on our mental well-being. But in a broader sense, I believe stress encompasses any condition that demands more energy and resources from the body, except for growth and development. This includes both acute and chronic needs for energy and resources, corresponding respectively to acute and chronic stress. Our body essentially functions as an electrochemical machine, requiring ample energy and resources to operate. This is similar to an electric car in proper working condition. It needs a structure made of steel, plastic, and batteries, and also the energy within the batteries to drive the flow of electrons, powering the motor and lighting up the display screen. In traditional Chinese medicine, the concepts of qi and blood, as I understand, align with this idea. Of course, my interpretation could be wrong, and I welcome corrections from knowledgeable individuals. I perceive qi as akin to electrochemical energy, where the mitochondria in our cells use sugars, fats, and amino acids to react with oxygen and produce energy stored in ADP molecules. These mitochondria are especially abundant in vital organs like the heart, liver, brain, lungs, and kidneys. Blood, on the other hand, represents tangible resources, including amino acids, fatty acids, sugars, vitamins, and other molecules that constitute our body structure and participate in chemical reactions. Walking requires energy. Running or sprinting demands even more muscle and energy. Rapid running generates stress in the body. The body uses energy to generate heat when exposed to cold wind. Taking cold showers in autumn or participating in winter swimming requires producing more heat to maintain body temperature. These activities are stressors for the body. Eating fatty pork makes the stomach secrete gastric acid and the liver to produce bile, consuming energy and molecules for various digested juices. Drinking alcohol with fatty pork puts extra strain on the stomach and liver as they fight against and process the alcohol, expending more energy and nutrients. Drinking alcohol is also a source of stress for the body. Staying up late playing games or binge watching until 1 a.m. instead of sleeping at 9 p.m. requires maintaining brain and body alertness, consuming more energy. Staying up late is another source of stress. Adults need about 2,000 kilocalories per day, but if you eat only one 500 kilocalorie meal a day for 3 days while dieting, the body must burn fat to generate the missing 1,500 kilocalories. Fasting is also a stressor. When the body is infected with influenza, it needs to raise its temperature and enhance immune functions, producing more immune cells to fight the virus and repair cells damaged by the virus, requiring more energy and resources. The influenza virus is a stressor for the body. Some stressors, I believe, are detrimental, such as staying up late, drinking alcohol, or being exposed to environmental toxins. However, others, like consuming plant-derived chemicals, cold and heat exposure, fasting, or intense exercise, should be considered dialectically. For instance, habitual winter swimmers, especially the elderly, experience stress with each short swim, but their bodies remain healthy through repeated exposure. However, for someone with coronary heart disease, even a single winter swim could be catastrophic. This concept is explained by the hormesis effect, where low doses are beneficial, but high doses inhibit function or are toxic. Thus, stress is not entirely negative. If harnessed properly, it can enhance metabolic flexibility and tolerance in the face of future stress. What does stress cause depression and anxiety? Ignoring or failing to adequately respond to stress, unable to mobilize sufficient energy and resources to resolve current problems, can lead to negative physical impacts. Looking at depression and anxiety, they are partly believed to stem from a lack of energy production by neuronal mitochondria. Some studies observe a correlation between these factors. Others suggest mitochondrial dysfunction as a key factor in depression. The brain, a highly energy-consuming organ, uses about 20% of the body's energy even at rest. Research indicates that insufficient oxygen supply to the brain can lead to depression, as this affects the mitochondria's ability to produce energy. If brain cells have been damaged, it means not only are certain neuronal areas dysfunctional, but also fewer healthy neurons are available to generate energy, potentially leading to depression. Magnesium deficiency is also considered a potential cause of depression, as magnesium is a coenzyme in mitochondrial energy production. Supplementing magnesium can improve symptoms in some patients with depression. Thiamine, vitamin B1, another nutrient, is negatively correlated with depressive symptoms in the elderly, as observed by Chinese researchers. In severe depression, studies found that concurrent treatment with thiamine can hasten symptom improvement. Psychological trauma, too, affects mitochondria. A small amount of stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline benefit mitochondria, but long-term exposure or high levels can be harmful. During such periods, overactivation of the sympathetic nervous system inhibits the vagus nerve's anti-inflammatory functions and damages central nervous system mitochondria. In summary, whether due to nutrient deficiencies, disease, unhealthy lifestyles, or psychological trauma, anything that affects the brain's internal oxygen supply, the mitochondrial fuel utilization process, or mitochondrial health, can lead to insufficient brain energy production, brain dysfunction, and potentially symptoms of depression and anxiety. Today's discussion is just one perspective on how insufficient brain energy impacts mental health. We need to pay more attention to the critical roles of diet and lifestyle in preventing unnecessary damage to cellular mitochondria, thereby enhancing their energy-producing capabilities and helping us better cope with stress. There is substantial evidence that even minor reductions can affect brain activity, reflected in changes in thought processes and subsequent behaviors. Nutrition influences mood. Deficiencies in many vitamins are linked to psychological symptoms. In some elderly patients, folate deficiency is associated with depression. Iron deficiency relates to apathy, depression, and rapid fatigue during physical activity. In several studies, improved thiamine status was linked to mood enhancement. One of the main symptoms of obstructive sleep apnea is severe and recurrent paroxysmal hypoxia, insufficient oxygen, during sleep. Increased sympathetic nervous system activity affects blood pressure. Thiamine deficiency induces gene expression similar to that observed in hypoxia, termed pseudohypoxia. Deficiencies in both magnesium and thiamine are linked to depression. The nervous system. Many posts on this website describe the distinction between what's called the voluntary nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. The term voluntary suggests that we can think and act at will, with actions determined by consciousness. The autonomic nervous system is almost entirely automatic, controlling many purely reflex actions, the most famous of which is the fight or flight reflex. Hunger and thirst are self-protective agents. Sexual desire maintains the continuation of species. Yes, these reflexes provide us with a sense of pleasure, which is a driving motivation, and the brain provides us with the sensory mechanisms that deliver this pleasure. Everything is connected through a complex code called DNA, whose individual characteristics describe the physical traits and personalities of every animal, including humans. From a purely philosophical standpoint, it raises the question of whether we truly have free will, or whether we are influenced by the environment we find ourselves in. If all components combine as designed, we can say that each person's blueprint determines the nature of their personality and reflects their mental and physical health. Our training in responding to life starts from infancy and is largely in the hands of parents. What's stress and sources of stress? Stress is a bodily or mental event that each of us must adapt to. As I have mentioned in other posts on this site, a Canadian researcher named Hans Selye studied the effects of bodily stress on animals for many years. He concluded that almost any form of stress requires an increased supply of cellular energy, just like a car engine climbing a hill. The stressed animal must adapt to the damage caused by Selye. He called this general adaptation syndrome. He used many different methods to induce stress because he wanted to know if different reactions would result based on the nature of the stress source. He found that the stress response is consistent across different species and was able to divide general adaptation syndrome into several predictable stages, each repeatable in every experiment. Unsurprisingly, his research included a series of continuous biochemical changes in body fluids. I found these changes similar to the laboratory changes in chronic disease patients. One of the students first induced this syndrome by depriving animals of the vitamin thiamine, thereby supporting the role of energy deficiency as a pathogenic factor. Selye believed that energy depletion leads to a collapse of human health, particularly energy depletion in the brain, leading to what he called adaptation diseases. Indeed, some form of life stress is absolutely necessary for a person to contemplate suicide. Therefore, it seems necessary to discuss the brain's mechanisms for coping with stress. The biological brain. Whether we like it or not, the brain is an electrochemical machine, and its function, like any machine, requires energy. The fact that the brain requires 20% of the total oxygen intake absolutely indicates its energy demands. There is ample evidence that even a slight reduction affects brain activity, which will be reflected in some change in the thought process and the subsequent behavior that results from it. Nutrition affects mood. Deficiencies in many vitamins are linked to psychological symptoms. In some elderly patients, folate deficiency is associated with depression. Iron deficiency is related to apathy, depression, and rapid fatigue during exercise. In several studies, improving thiamine status is related to an improvement in mood. One of the main manifestations of obstructive sleep apnea is severe and repeated paroxysmal hypoxia, insufficient oxygen, during sleep. Increased activity of the sympathetic nervous system affects blood pressure. Thiamine deficiency induces gene expression similar to that observed in hypoxia and is referred to as causing pseudohypoxia. Deficiencies in magnesium and thiamine are both linked to depression. Hypoxia and pseudohypoxia and depression and anxiety. In my years of medical practice, I've observed that even a mild deficiency in thiamine can lead to symptoms typically considered psychological. By making people aware of the importance of a proper diet and supplementing vitamins, most importantly thiamine and magnesium, chronic anxiety and depression often improve. I've never been able to understand why patients are blamed for producing symptoms beyond the understanding of their doctors. Abnormal thoughts, emotions, and various forms of mental activity are all produced by electrochemical reactions, which are exacerbated by mild hypoxia or pseudohypoxia. Anxiety and depression are entirely normal emotional responses, but when they persist for no apparent reason, it's due to the exaggeration of these biochemical triggers. In particular, The sympathetic branch of the autonomic nervous system is easily activated because any degree of hypoxia is an apparent danger to the organism, and perceiving danger triggers the fight or flight reflex response. By its nature, this reflex may trigger aggressive behavior when dissatisfaction explodes into violence. The consumption of empty calories, especially in the form of sugar and fatty substances, leads to multi-symptom diseases in millions of people. These individuals cannot cope with normal life stresses and are more prone to feelings of despair. Suicide seems the only option. The idea that overeating could lead to depression and suicidal thoughts is currently not accepted, but the biochemical results of alcohol and sugar intake are the same in parts of the brain responsible for processing these vital reflexes.